Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to buckle up and dive into the world of Bitcoin. And guys, let me tell you, the next few weeks could be absolutely huge. We got some analysis from one of you listeners, and let's just say we're glued to the charts right now.
It is a fascinating situation, to be sure. Yeah, we're looking at this trend line. It's been incredibly influential in Bitcoin's price history. And we're on a collision course once again.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's set the stage a little bit for our listeners. So everyone picture a Bitcoin price chart in their minds. Candlesticks, lines, all that fun stuff. Now imagine this bright yellow line cutting right through it all. A line that dates all the way back to 2013. That's our trend line for this deep dive. And this isn't just some random line we're looking at either. This thing has acted as both a support and a resistance level for Bitcoin time and time again.
It really is remarkable. You can see it so clearly in the previous market cycles, like back in 2013, when Bitcoin made its first big run up to $1,200, which seemed crazy at the time. It paused right at this line. And then in 2017, same story. Bitcoin goes parabolic up to $20,000, touches the trend line. And then, well, things got a little choppy.
Okay, so we've got this historical pattern, this Bitcoin roller coaster that just loves riding this trend line.
Yeah.
So where do things stand right now? What's got us so excited about this particular moment in time?
Well, as we speak, Bitcoin is on a direct trajectory to intersect with this trend line once again. And the date that everyone has circled on their calendar is October 1st, 2023. It's like a deadline for Bitcoin to make a decision, breakthrough or get rejected. And each path has UGE implications.
So October 1st, mark your calendars, folks, because things could get very interesting very fast. But before we dive into those potential scenarios, let's talk about what kind of trend line are we even talking about here?
Right. A little context is important. What we're looking at is what's called a logarithmic trend line. And without getting too technical, a logarithmic trend line is different from a simple straight line. It curves slightly, reflecting the idea that as an asset grows larger, it takes even larger amounts of buying pressure to push it up at the same rate.
So it's like trying to push a boulder uphill. The higher you go, the harder it gets. And with Bitcoin currently bumping up against this logarithmic trend line, we're all watching very closely to see if it has the strength to power through.
And there are additional clues that have analysts buzzing right now. For example, we're currently seeing a bullish engulfing candle pattern forming on the monthly chart. Now, what that means in simple terms is that we're seeing this very strong upward price move. And it's essentially engulfing the previous period's price action, which suggests a potential shift in momentum to the upside.
So it's like Bitcoin is giving us a little wink and a nod,
Yeah.
saying, hey, I might just have what it takes to break through this time. You know, we've been around the block a few times. We know better than to get ahead of ourselves. Not all sunshine and rainbows, right? There's always a chance that Bitcoin stumbles at the trend line. So let's walk through both scenarios. Let's start with the good stuff. What happens if Bitcoin smashes through this historical barrier? Paint us a picture of that breakout scenario.
All right, let's indulge in a little bit of hopium. If Bitcoin musters the strength to break through this logarithmic trend line, and I want to emphasize that's a big if, we could be looking at the start of a very powerful bull market.
Okay, I'm officially excited now. So what kind of price targets are we talking about in this breakout scenario? Give us the good stuff.
Well, if we break through and this bullish momentum takes hold, the first major resistance level we'd be eyeing is around $70,000. Now, if we blow past that, then $72,500 comes into play. And if things really heat up, well, let's just say $80,000 wouldn't be out of the question.
Wow, $80,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now that would be something else.
But you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? Bitcoin has a bit of a reputation for being, shall we say, a tad unpredictable. That it does. And while that $80,000 target is certainly exhilarating, it's crucial to remember that Bitcoin is notorious for its boom and bust cycles. It's like a teenager with a driver's license for the first time. A little too much enthusiasm. And a tendency to overextend a bit.
So while we might see this glorious run-up in prices, we also need to be prepared for a potential reality check, a classic Bitcoin correction.
Precisely. What goes up often comes down, and Bitcoin has a history of reminding us of that in a rather dramatic fashion sometimes.
Okay, so we've got this potential breakout scenario, which has us dreaming of Lambos and spaceships. But we also know that Bitcoin has a knack for pulling the rug out from under us. So what happens if Bitcoin hits this trend line and just kind of stalls?
Well, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? And it's one we need to be prepared for. If Bitcoin fails to break through this logarithmic trend line, and I mean really break through it with conviction, it could tell us that the bears are still in control.
So instead of fireworks, we might get more of a slow burn, or even worse, Another one of those infamous Bitcoin crashes.
Yeah, it's definitely within the realm of possibility. Now, I don't want to sound the alarm bells or anything, but historically speaking, when Bitcoin fails to meet these key technical levels, it tends to retrace its steps, and sometimes quite sharply.
A Bitcoin reality check, like you were saying earlier. And we've seen these corrections before. They're not pretty.
Definitely not. They can be quite dramatic, especially for those who are caught off guard. This is why understanding these historical patterns, these trend lines, these cycles, it's so important.
Yeah, it's like having a map of where Bitcoin has been and maybe where it's going, even if the roads are a little bumpy sometimes. And speaking of maps, let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here. You mentioned that Bitcoin is a history of repeating itself. Can you walk us through those previous cycles a bit, those boom and bust periods that you were talking about earlier? I got to be honest with you. Every time I think I've got Bitcoin figured out, it throws me for a loop.
It's true. Bitcoin definitely has a flair for the dramatic. But the interesting thing is, if we actually look back at its history, we can see this recurring pattern, these cycles of explosive growth, followed by significant corrections.
Okay, so walk us through it. What happened in those past cycles?
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to 2013. Back then, Bitcoin was this niche internet experiment, pretty much, trading for just a few bucks. And then, suddenly, it caught the attention of investors and the media, and its price shot up, all the way to over $1,200. It was a time of incredible excitement and speculation. But then, almost as quickly as it rose, it came crashing down, losing a significant portion of its value.
It's kind of hard to believe now that
Yeah.
Bitcoin's only been around for a little over a decade.
Mhm.
It feels like it's been making headlines forever. Okay, so we have this huge run-up in 2013, followed by a crash. What happened next? Did Bitcoin just disappear?
Not at all. And that's the fascinating part. After a period of consolidation, Bitcoin started to climb again. And then came 2017. And this time, it was even more dramatic. Bitcoin went on an absolute tear, fueled by this surge in mainstream interest and the rise of ICOs. Remember those? People were pouring money into Bitcoin, and it soared to an all-time high of nearly $20,000.
Oh, I remember that. Everyone and their grandmother was talking about Bitcoin back then. It felt like the future of finance had arrived.
It really did. It was a period of unprecedented hype and speculation. But just like in 2013, that parabolic rise was followed by a sharp correction. By 2018, Bitcoin had lost over 80% of its value, crashing down to around $3,000.
Ouch. That's a harsh reminder that what goes up must come down, especially in the world of crypto. But here's the thing. Despite those dramatic crashes, Bitcoin didn't disappear.
Yeah.
In fact, it seems to have this uncanny ability to bounce back,
Yeah.
to reinvent itself.
Absolutely. And that resilient, that's part of what makes Bitcoin so intriguing. It's this volatile, unpredictable asset that seems to defy traditional market logic sometimes. It's like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
So we've got these past cycles of boom and bust, incredible rallies followed by gut-wrenching corrections. And now here we are again, facing this crucial moment. With this logarithmic trend line looming large, makes you wonder if history's about to repeat itself. Are we about to witness another one of those epic Bitcoin rallies, followed by one of those corrections that rocks the market? It's happened before, multiple times. And as we've seen, those patterns, those cycles, they have a way of repeating.
It is the question everyone's asking, isn't it? And there are definitely analysts out there, some with pretty impressive track records, actually. And they believe that if Bitcoin does break through this logarithmic trend line and surges towards those price targets we were talking about, $70,000, $80,000, even higher, it could signal that a market top is in the making.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We could be headed for another potential Bitcoin peak, but this time it's different because we have this historical trend line acting like this giant flashing neon sign, potentially giving us a little bit of a heads up.
That's one way to look at it. It's like having this roadmap with
Yeah.
a big, bold arrow on it, pointing towards a potential market turning point. Now, of course, no one has a crystal ball. And predicting the future of Bitcoin, let's just say it's not an exact science, but recognizing these historical patterns, understanding these technical indicators like this trend line, can give us valuable insights.
Insights that could potentially help us navigate this crazy world of crypto a little more effectively, right?
Exactly. It's all about managing risk, understanding how these markets move in cycles, and just being prepared for both the exhilarating highs and the inevitable pullbacks.
So as we stand here today, just a couple weeks away from this October 1st deadline, what should our listener be thinking about right now? What's the key takeaway from this whole deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway here is this. Whether Bitcoin breaks through this trend line or gets completely rejected, its price action over this next few weeks could be a really significant signal. And not just for the crypto market either, but potentially for the broader financial landscape as well.
Okay, now you've officially blown my mind. We started with a Bitcoin trend line, and now we're talking about potential implications for the entire financial world. How does that even work?
Well, think about it this way. Bitcoin, for all of its quirks and volatility, it's really become increasingly intertwined with the global financial system. It's influenced by macroeconomic factors, investor sentiment, even geopolitical events. So if Bitcoin,
Mhm.
with its tendency to mirror these broader market cycles, is hinting at a potential peak and a subsequent correction, it could be a sign that other asset classes and other markets might be nearing a turning point as well. It's like that canary in the coal mine, giving us a little glimpse into the overall health and direction of the entire global financial ecosystem.
Wow, that is a lot to unpack. So it's not just about whether Bitcoin hits $70,000 or $80,000. It's about recognizing the potential ripple effects, the interconnectedness of everything, and understanding that what happens in the world of crypto doesn't necessarily stay in the world of crypto.
Precisely. And that's what makes this such an exciting time to be following these markets. This constant evolution, the uncertainty, the potential for disruption. It's a good reminder that we're all part of this really complex and interconnected system. And understanding those connections, those historical echoes, can give us a real edge in navigating the future.
Some much-needed wisdom for today's deep dive. A huge thank you to our expert for walking us through all of this,
Hmm.
and to all of you listeners for providing the spark that ignited this conversation. As we approach this October 1st deadline, keep your eyes on Bitcoin, but remember to zoom out every now and then. Look for those connections, those broader trends, because they might just hold the key to understanding what lies ahead, not just for the crypto market, but for the world. Until next time, everybody, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, stay curious.